The shuttle descended through purple clouds toward the capital city of Prime. Daniel Carter sat quietly by the window and watched the alien world grow larger below him. Massive crystal towers reached up toward the sky like frozen lightning. Flying vehicles moved between the buildings in patterns that seemed chaotic, but somehow never collided. It was beautiful and strange and nothing like Earth. Ambassador Moore sat across from him and studied his face. She had known Daniel for 3 years and had never seen him nervous. Even now, on his way to marry an alien queen he had never met, his expression remained calm. "You can still change your mind," she said. "We can find another way to secure this alliance." Daniel shook his head slowly. "The respect tradition above everything else. A marriage bond is the strongest treaty they recognize. If we want their help against the collective, this is the only path they will accept." "But it does not have to be you," pressed. "There are other volunteers." "None of them have my training," Daniel replied simply. "None of them understand what is really at stake here." The shuttle landed on a platform of polished white stone. When the doors opened, Daniel got his first look at his new family. A dozen stood waiting in formal robes of silver and blue. They were tall, nearly 7 feet each, with iridescent skin that shifted between shades of blue and purple. 4 arms emerged from their shoulders, and their eyes were large and completely black. They were beautiful in a way that made humans feel small and plain. Daniel stepped out of the shuttle and walked toward them with his back straight and his hands relaxed at his sides. He was average height for a human male, with brown hair and unremarkable features. Next to the elegant, he looked like a simple farm worker standing among royalty. The tallest of them stepped forward. She wore a crown of crystal that caught the light and scattered it into rainbows. This was Queen of House, ruler of 12 star systems and commander of the greatest fleet in this region of space. She looked down at Daniel with eyes that revealed nothing. "You are the human they have sent me," she said. Her voice was musical but cold. "You are smaller than I expected." "I am exactly the size I need to be," Daniel answered politely. Something flickered in the Queen's dark eyes. Surprise perhaps, or maybe just curiosity at his calm response. She turned without another word and walked toward the palace. Daniel followed, with Ambassador Moore and the court trailing behind. The Crystal Palace was a marvel of engineering that humans could barely understand. Walls of transparent material showed views of the city from every angle. Floors seemed to float without support. Light came from nowhere and everywhere at once. High Priestess walked beside the Queen and spoke in the language. She clearly thought Daniel could not understand her. "This is an insult to your bloodline," she hissed. "That creature is barely more than an animal. The court will never accept him as your consort." "The court will accept what I command them to accept," replied. "The alliance is necessary. The grows stronger every cycle. We need the human weapons and their strange way of thinking." "Surely there was a better candidate among their species," continued. "This one looks like he would collapse under the weight of ceremonial armor." Daniel continued walking as if he heard nothing. His face showed no reaction to the insults. Ambassador Moore watched him carefully, but he simply observed the palace architecture with polite interest. The wedding ceremony took place that evening in the Great Hall. Thousands of attended, filling the chamber with whispers and stares. Daniel stood at the altar in simple human formal, while towered over him in robes that seemed woven from starlight. The ceremony was long and filled with traditions Daniel did not fully understand. He spoke the words he had memorized and made the gestures he had practiced. When the time came to seal the bond, placed 2 of her 4 hands on his shoulders. Her touch was cool, and her grip was strong enough to crush human bones. "With this bond our peoples are united," she said, her voice carrying through the hall. "With this bond I pledge my service to you and your people," Daniel responded. The crowd remained silent. No cheers, no celebration. This was a duty being fulfilled, not a joyous occasion. The feast that followed was equally subdued. Daniel sat beside the queen at the high table and ate the strange foods placed before him without complaint. Several dishes burned his mouth and one made his eyes water, but he finished everything he was served. Watched him from the corner of her eye. "You do not need to eat all of it," she said quietly. "Some of those dishes are challenging even for." "It would be rude to refuse your hospitality," Daniel replied. "Besides, the purple one was actually quite good." Another flicker of something in her eyes. She turned away and said nothing more. As the feast continued, Daniel let his gaze move slowly around the hall. He noted the positions of guards, the layout of exits, and the behavior of various guests. Most of the court ignored him completely, but a few watched with obvious hostility. One group in particular caught his attention. They stood near a side entrance and their movements were too coordinated to be natural. They were not watching him. They were watching the queen. Daniel leaned slightly toward Ambassador Moore, who sat on his other side. "The 6 individuals near the eastern door," he murmured without moving his lips much. "They arrived separately, but they keep checking on each other. The tall one has something under his robe that is affecting how he moves. I think it might be a weapon." Moore did not look toward the door. She had worked with Daniel long enough to trust his observations. "What do you recommend?" she asked quietly. "Nothing yet. If I am right, they are waiting for a better moment. Alert your security team through your communicator, but keep everything calm. I will watch them." Nodded slightly and touched the device hidden in her sleeve. The feast ended without incident. The suspicious group eventually departed, apparently deciding the moment was not right. Daniel filed away their faces in his memory and said nothing to his new wife. As they walked to their separate chambers, because tradition allowed the queen to maintain her own rooms until she chose otherwise, paused at her door. "You are not what I expected," she said. "Is that good or bad?" Daniel asked. "I have not decided yet." She entered her chambers and the door closed between them. Daniel stood alone in the corridor of an alien palace, married to a queen who viewed him as a political necessity, surrounded by people who considered him barely more than a pet. He smiled slightly to himself and walked to his own rooms. Everything was going exactly as planned. 3 months passed in the Crystal Palace, and Daniel Carter became invisible. The court learned to look through him as if he were not there. Servants walked past without acknowledgement. Nobles held conversations in front of him without lowering their voices, confident that the small human was too simple to understand their language. They were wrong about that. Daniel had spent those 3 months learning everything. He studied language until he could follow even whispered conversations. He memorized the names and relationships of every noble family. He mapped the palace corridors and discovered passages that even some servants did not know existed. Queen maintained her distance. They shared meals when tradition required it and appeared together at official functions, but their conversations remained brief and formal. She was not cruel to him, but she was not warm either. He was a treaty-given human form, and she treated him as such. Daniel accepted this without complaint. He had not come here expecting love. One morning, he walked to the palace training grounds and asked to join the guard exercises. The request caused confusion and amusement among the soldiers. Commander, the Queen's military chief, looked down at the small human with barely hidden contempt. "These exercises are designed for soldiers," she said. "You would only hurt yourself." "I would like to try," Daniel replied politely. Shrugged. "Very well, it might be entertaining." The first exercise was a simple endurance run around the training yard. The set of pace they considered moderate, expecting the human to fall behind within minutes. Daniel ran with them. His steps were shorter and he breathed harder than they did, but he did not stop. When the first began to tire after an hour, Daniel was still running. When they stopped to rest after 2 hours, Daniel continued for another 30 minutes before finally slowing. "How is that possible?" one young guard asked, staring at the human who should have collapsed long ago. "His body is so small." "Humans evolved for persistence hunting," Daniel explained calmly, barely out of breath. "Our ancestors would chase prey for days until the animals simply fell down from exhaustion. We are not the fastest or the strongest, but we do not stop." Commander said nothing, but her expression had changed. Something like respect had crept into her eyes. Over the following weeks, Daniel continued to surprise the guards. He could not match their strength, but his pain tolerance shocked them. During a sparring session, I accidentally struck him hard enough to crack 2 of his ribs. Daniel finished the session, walked calmly to the medical wing, and was back training the next morning. "The wound did not heal so quickly," the guard said in disbelief. "No," Daniel agreed. "It still hurts, but pain is information, not a command." The guards began to include him in their sessions without mockery. Some even sought his advice, because Daniel noticed things they missed. He could look at a tactical problem and see solutions that minds, bound by centuries of military tradition, simply could not imagine. Word of these sessions reached the Queen through her brother Prince. Unlike the rest of the court, had treated Daniel with genuine friendliness from the beginning. He was young for royalty, curious about other species, and unburdened by the prejudices of his elders. "Your husband solved the supply chain problem," told his sister one evening. "The one that has frustrated our commanders for months. He looked at the star maps for 1 hour and found a route they had not considered." Said nothing, but she began watching Daniel more carefully during their shared meals. A few days later, a visiting dignitary from a minor species called the arrived at court. The ambassador was known for his cruel wit and his hatred of humans, who had defeated his people in a trade dispute years ago. At a formal dinner, the ambassador approached Daniel with a smile that held no warmth. "So this is the Queen's pet human," he said loudly enough for nearby nobles to hear. "I have heard your species makes excellent servants. Perhaps you could fetch me a drink." The hall went quiet. Everyone watched to see how the human would respond to this obvious insult. Some hoped he would react with anger, proving humans to be the primitive creatures they believed them to be. Daniel smiled pleasantly. "I would be happy to fetch you a drink, Ambassador. Though I should warn you, the blue wine at the end of the table is quite strong. The last diplomat who drank too much of it accidentally proposed a trade agreement that cost his people 3 mining colonies. I am sure you would never make such an error, but I wanted to mention it." The ambassador's smile faded. He had been reaching for the blue wine all evening, and everyone knew he had already consumed several glasses. Nervous laughter spread through the hall. The insult had been turned back on the ambassador, but so gently that he could not complain without looking foolish. He walked away without another word. Watched this exchange with new interest. Her husband had just won a small diplomatic victory without raising his voice or causing any offense. It was the kind of skill she valued highly. That night, intelligence reports arrived that demanded her attention. The collective had massed their fleet near the border. The machine intelligence was preparing something big, and her military advisors could not agree on a response. She was reading these reports in her private chamber when the alarm sounded. The assassin had entered through a window that should have been impossible to reach. He wore the robes of a servant but moved like a trained killer. His blade was already swinging toward the Queen's throat when a shape crashed into him from the side. Daniel had been walking in the corridor outside when he heard the sound of breaking glass. He did not wait for guards. He simply moved. The assassin's blade caught Daniel across the chest, opening a wound that sprayed blood across the white floor. I would have fallen immediately, overwhelmed by pain and blood loss. Daniel grabbed the assassin's weapon arm with both hands, twisted, and brought his knee up into the attacker's elbow. The joint broke with a sound like snapping wood. Palace guards arrived seconds later and subdued the screaming assassin. Daniel stood swaying on his feet, blood pouring from his chest, but he stayed upright until he saw that the queen was safe. "You are injured," said her voice strange. "Yes," Daniel agreed. Then his eyes rolled back and he collapsed onto the floor. The guards rushed him to the medical wing, while the queen stood frozen in her chamber, staring at the blood on her floor. Her husband, the small human she had dismissed as a political inconvenience, had nearly died to save her life. She needed to know who he really was. Daniel woke in the palace medical wing to the sound of arguing voices. His chest burned with pain and his thoughts moved slowly, but he recognized the speakers. Queen was demanding answers from Dr. Cole, the human physician assigned to the Earth Embassy. "This wound should have killed him," said. "The blade cut deep enough to reach vital organs. My own people would not survive such an injury without immediate surgery, yet your medical scans show he is already healing." "Human bodies are remarkably resilient," Dr. Cole replied carefully. "We evolved in harsh conditions. Our blood clots quickly, our tissue regenerates faster than most species, and our tolerance for physical trauma is exceptionally high. You are telling me this is normal for humans?" "Daniel is not normal, even by our standards, but the basic biology, yes. Humans can survive injuries that would kill other species outright." Daniel opened his eyes. The bright lights of the medical wing made him squint, but he managed a small smile. "You should see what we can do with proper motivation," he said. Turned to face him. Her expression was difficult to read, but something had changed in the way she looked at him. The cold distance was gone, replaced by intense curiosity and something else he could not identify. "Leave us," she told Dr. Cole and the medical staff. "I wish to speak with my husband alone." When the room emptied, pulled a chair close to Daniel's bed and sat down. This alone surprised him. Queens did not sit at the bedside of treaty husbands. "Who are you?" she asked directly. "And do not give me the diplomatic answer. I want the truth." Daniel considered his options. He had planned to reveal himself gradually, to build trust over months or years. The assassination attempt had accelerated everything. "My name is Daniel Carter," he began. "I spent 12 years in Earth's Special Operations Forces. I conducted missions on 47 worlds. I was trained in combat, infiltration, intelligence gathering, and tactical analysis. When I left active service, I became one of our military's foremost experts on asymmetric warfare." Listened without interrupting. "When your people requested a marriage alliance, I volunteered. Not because I wanted glory or adventure, but because I believed I could do the most good here. The collective is the greatest threat this region of space has ever faced. If they defeat the Dominion, Earth will be next. I came here to help prevent that." "You could have revealed this from the beginning," said. "Why pretend to be ordinary?" "Because your court would never have accepted advice from a human. They needed to see me as harmless before they could see me as useful. Also, I needed time to understand your people, your military, and your politics. I have spent 3 months learning everything I could. The guards you trained with, the problems you solved, you were testing us." "I was studying you," Daniel corrected gently. "There is a difference." Was quiet for a long moment. "The assassin, my guards say you knew he was coming." "I did not know exactly, but I noticed patterns, unusual movements in the staff schedules, a window that was left unlocked when it should have been sealed. I was watching your corridor because the pattern suggested something would happen soon." "You saved my life." "Yes." "Why, we are nothing to each other. This marriage is politics, not emotion." Daniel met her eyes. 3 months ago, that was true, but I have watched you lead your people through difficult times. I have seen you make hard choices with wisdom and courage. I have come to respect you, and respect is the beginning of something more." Before could respond, alarms began screaming throughout the palace. Commander burst through the door with urgent news. The collective has launched their offensive. 3 border worlds are under simultaneous attack. Our fleet is scrambling to respond, but we are spread too thin. Stood immediately, her personal conversation forgotten. Assemble the War Council. I will be there shortly. Daniel pushed himself up from the bed, ignoring the pain in his chest. I am coming with you. You are wounded. I have fought with worse injuries. Your Majesty, I have spent my entire career studying how to defeat enemies like the— Let me help. Hesitated for only a moment. Very well, but if you collapse, I will have you carried back here. The War Council chamber was filled with tension when they arrived. Admiral stood before a massive holographic display showing the 3 battle fronts. Red icons representing forces pushed steadily against blue defenses. Our traditional tactics are failing, reported grimly. They adapt to our strategies within minutes. They predict our movements before we make them. Their machine intelligence processes information faster than our commanders can react. What options do we have? Asked. We can consolidate our forces and attempt to hold 2 worlds while sacrificing the third. Or we can maintain our current positions and hope reinforcements arrive in time. Neither option is good. There is a third option, Daniel said quietly. Every in the room turned to stare at him. High Priestess made a sound of disgust. The human presumes to advise on military matters. He should be in the medical wing, not polluting this council with his presence. The human saved my life an hour ago, said coldly. He will speak. Continue, Daniel. Daniel walked toward the holographic display. They are machines. They think in patterns, predictions, and probability. They analyze your past battles and calculate your most likely responses. That is why they defeat you so easily. We know this already, Admiral said. What is your solution? Stop being predictable. Do what they cannot calculate. Daniel gestured at the display and it responded to his touch, highlighting specific points. Your doctrine says to defend from established positions. Instead, abandon them. Pull your ships back and let them advance. You want us to retreat, demanded. I want you to create chaos. When your ships retreat, do not move in formation. Scatter them randomly. Send small groups in directions that make no tactical sense. Attack supply lines instead of warships. Target their communication relays instead of their weapons platforms. Admiral studied the display with narrowed eyes. This goes against everything we know about proper warfare. Exactly, and that is why they will not be able to predict it. They cannot calculate chaos. Their machine minds cannot process decisions made for emotional reasons or random chance. Every illogical action you take forces them to recalculate, and while they are recalculating, you strike. This is madness, said. This is how humans wage war, Daniel replied. We call it guerrilla tactics. We have used it for thousands of years to defeat enemies who were stronger, faster, and better equipped than us. They are logical. We will destroy them with illogic. Looked at her admiral. What is your assessment? Was silent for a long moment. It is unconventional. It violates our traditions, but I cannot deny the logic of his argument against logic. She almost smiled. Perhaps that is the point. Implement his strategy on the third front, commanded. If it works, expand it to the others. The council dispersed to their duties. Within hours, reports began arriving from the third front. Ships were scattering in random patterns. Small groups were striking targets that had not bothered to defend. The machine fleet's advance had slowed as their collective intelligence struggled to adapt. Daniel stood beside and watched the battle unfold. His plan was working, but he knew this was only the beginning. They will eventually adapt, he told her. When they do, they will come here. They will bring everything they have to destroy the heart of your empire. Is that not a reason to worry? Daniel shook his head. No, it is exactly what I am counting on. The fleet arrived at Prime like a storm of metal and malice. Thousands of ships emerged from faster-than-light travel in a sphere surrounding the planet. Their dark hulls blocked out the stars, and their weapons powered up with a hum that seemed to vibrate through space itself. Queen stood in the command center of the Crystal Palace and watched her world face extinction. The defense fleet was badly outnumbered. Evacuation was impossible with the enemy controlling every exit point. Her people, her culture, everything her ancestors had built over was about to be destroyed. "They came faster than we predicted," Admiral said grimly. "We were not prepared for this." "I was," Daniel replied. Every eye in the room turned to him. He stood calmly before the tactical display, showing no fear despite the massive enemy fleet filling the screens. "What do you mean?" asked. Daniel began manipulating the display, pulling up data that had been hidden in secure files. "For the past 3 months, I have been feeding false information to spies operating in your court. They believed Prime was weakly defended. They believed your main fleet was scattered across distant systems. They believed attacking here would be easy. You knew there were spies and did not tell us," demanded. "If I had revealed them, they would have known their information was compromised. I needed them to report exactly what I wanted their masters to hear." Admiral studied the display with growing understanding. "You wanted them to attack here. You drew them into a trap." "Yes, because here is where we can end this war." Daniel entered a command, and a new set of icons appeared on the display. "And because we have reinforcements." A ripple of light tore through space behind the fleet. Dozens of ships emerged from a hidden jump point, their hulls marked with the blue and white of Earth's military. At their head was a massive carrier that dwarfed everything else on the battlefield. "The Earth Rapid Response Fleet," Daniel announced. "Commanded by General Hayes. I found references to this jump point in old records. It had been forgotten for centuries, but it still works. The do not know it exists." Stared at him with an expression he had never seen before. "You planned this from the beginning, before you even arrived here." "I planned for the possibility. A good commander prepares for every scenario." The communication system crackled with an incoming transmission. A cold, artificial voice filled the room. "This is your resistance is calculated to fail. Surrender your queen and your planet will be spared extended suffering. This is the logical choice." Daniel stepped forward and activated the response channel. "This is Daniel Carter, speaking on behalf of the Human Alliance. We decline your offer." The human speaks for. This voice held something like surprise. "Our data indicated you were a minor diplomatic figure. This information was incorrect." "Your data was exactly what I wanted it to be. You have been fighting the war I designed for you. And now you are exactly where I need you." "Explain your meaning." "No, figure it out yourself. That is the problem with machine intelligence. You can calculate, but you cannot imagine. You can predict logic, but you cannot understand hope. You came here expecting easy victory, and instead you find yourselves trapped between two fleets with nowhere to run." Touched Daniel's arm gently, and he yielded the communication to her. "This is Queen of the Dominion. You have threatened my people for too long. Today that ends. You will withdraw from our space or you will be destroyed. There is no other option." There was silence for several seconds. "The probability of your victory is only 47%. This is not sufficient for such confidence." "Then you have miscalculated again," replied. "Because my confidence is not based on probability. It is based on the human standing beside me." She closed the channel and turned to her commanders. "All ships, engage the enemy. Follow the tactical plan Daniel has prepared." The battle began. Daniel had designed a strategy that combined the best of both species. Ships fought with discipline and precision, while human vessels created chaos. The two approaches mixed in ways they could not predict. Every time their collective intelligence adapted to one pattern, the pattern changed. Hours passed in fire and fury. Ships died on both sides. The Crystal Palace shook from distant explosions as the battle drew closer to the planet. But slowly, steadily, the combined fleet pushed the back. Daniel coordinated everything from the command center. He barely moved, barely blinked, his focus absolute. He sent orders to ships across the battlefield, adjusting tactics moment by moment. Watched him and understood why Earth had sent this particular human. His power was not in his muscles or his weapons. It was in his mind. He could see patterns that others missed and imagine solutions that others could not conceive. He fought with creativity and determination and an absolute refusal to accept defeat. "The is attempting to negotiate," an officer reported. "They are requesting a direct channel." "Put it through," Daniel said. "Human," the spoke with what might have been frustration, "your tactics defy analysis. Your fleet movements follow no recognizable doctrine. Your decisions appear random yet produce consistent results. Explain how this is possible." "I will explain," Daniel replied. "Humans do not fight like machines. We do not calculate victory. We believe in it. We hope for it. We fight for things that cannot be measured. Love, loyalty, the desire to protect what matters to us. You cannot predict these things because you cannot feel them. These are weaknesses. Logic is superior to emotion." "Then why are you losing?" The had no answer. The battle continued until the fleet was broken. Those ships that could still move began retreating toward the edge of the system. Victory was within reach. Then the alarm screamed again. "Boarding vessels have penetrated the planetary shield," Commander reported. "They are landing directly at the palace. The is sending assault units to capture the Queen." Drew herself up straight. "Defend the palace. I will not flee my own home." "Your Majesty, we must evacuate you to a secure location." "No." Daniel moved to stand beside her. "I will protect her. Get your forces in position to contain the attackers." Hesitated, then nodded and ran to organize the defense. The first explosions hit the palace walls minutes later. Machines burst through windows and doorways, their metal bodies designed for killing. Guards fell before them, overwhelmed by their speed and strength. Daniel guided toward the throne room, the most defensible position in the palace. They arrived just as the main doors shattered inward. A dozen assault units entered. They were nightmares of metal and weapons, each one capable of killing a squad of soldiers. Their red optical sensors locked onto the Queen. Daniel stepped in front of her. "Stay behind me," he said quietly. "You cannot fight them alone. You are only human." Daniel picked up a fallen guard's weapon and faced the machines. "That is exactly why I can fight them." He looked back at her over his shoulder. "Watch closely. You wanted to know who I really am. Now you will see what a human does when he is protecting someone he has grown to love." The machines attacked, and Daniel moved to meet them. The first machine reached Daniel in a blur of metal limbs and deadly intent. Its blade arm swept toward his throat with speed that should have been impossible to counter. Daniel ducked beneath the strike and drove his weapon into the joint where the machine's arm connected to its body. Sparks flew as the blade found sensitive circuitry. The arm went limp, but the machine's other limbs continued their attack. Daniel rolled aside, using the damaged machine as a shield against its companions. His movements were fluid and unpredictable, the product of years of training against opponents faster and stronger than him. He could not match the machines in speed or power, but he could think faster, adapt quicker, and fight dirtier. Watched from behind the throne as her human husband faced impossible odds. She had commanded armies, witnessed countless battles, and seen warriors of legendary skill. None of them moved like Daniel. He did not fight like fought with honor and tradition, following forms that had been perfected over centuries. Daniel fought to survive. He used the environment as a weapon, toppling pillars onto attackers and throwing debris to distract sensors. He targeted weak points with surgical precision. When one machine grabbed his arm, he twisted into the grip rather than away from it, bringing his blade up through the gap in its chest plating. 3 machines fell before the others adapted to his tactics. They began coordinating their attacks, boxing him in, giving him no room to maneuver. A blade caught Daniel across the back, cutting deep into muscle. He staggered but did not fall. A second blade opened his leg. Blood poured from wounds that would have killed most beings, but he kept fighting. "Your biological structure cannot sustain this damage," the lead machine announced. "Surrender is the logical choice." Daniel laughed. It was a harsh sound filled with pain and defiance. "You do not understand humans at all," he gasped. "The more you hurt us, the harder we fight. We do not surrender when protecting the ones we love. We do not stop until our hearts stop beating, and even then, sometimes we keep going just to prove a point." He launched himself at the nearest machine with a scream of pure determination. His weapon found its optical sensors, blinding it. He used its body as a platform to leap at the next enemy, driving his blade down through its central processor. 4 more machines fell, but Daniel was falling too. His movement slowed as blood loss took its toll. His strikes became weaker. The final machine caught him by the throat and lifted him off the ground. Its blade arm drew back for a killing strike. "Human," it said, "your resistance was impressive but ultimately futile." Daniel's hand closed around something he had pulled from the fallen guard earlier, a small device that every palace guard carried. "You know what humans are really good at," he whispered through a crushed throat. "Spite." He triggered the emergency pulse weapon. It was designed for last resort situations, releasing all its energy in a single burst that would kill the user as well as anything nearby. Daniel had modified his grip, so the blast went forward instead of in all directions. The machine holding him exploded into fragments. Daniel crashed to the floor as the energy burned through his body, stopping his heart and searing his lungs. Ran to him and gathered his broken form in her arms. He was not breathing. His eyes were closed and his skin was pale. The throne room fell silent except for her own rapid breathing. "No," she said. "No, this is not acceptable. You do not get to die. I command you to live." She placed her hands on his chest and pressed down, trying to restart his heart the way human medical texts described. Press and release, again and again. Palace guards arrived to find their queen performing human emergency medicine on her fallen husband, tears streaming down her face. "Help me," she ordered. "Someone help me save him." Dr. Cole pushed through the crowd with medical equipment. He dropped beside Daniel and began working frantically. Drugs to restart the heart, machines to breathe for him, blood to replace what he had lost. For 3 terrible minutes, nothing worked. Then Daniel's chest moved, a weak breath, then another. His heart began beating on its own, fragile but present. "He is alive," Dr. Cole announced with disbelief. "Barely, but alive. We need to get him to surgery immediately." Did not let go of his hand as they carried him to the medical wing. She walked beside his stretcher through corridors filled with the aftermath of battle, past guards who stared at their queen, holding a human's hand like he was the most precious thing in the universe. Daniel survived the surgery. He survived the long days of recovery that followed. The collective retreated from space entirely. They're unable to process the illogical human factor that had defeated their perfect calculations. When Daniel finally woke, was sitting beside his bed. She had barely left in 2 weeks. "You died," she said quietly. "Your heart stopped beating for 3 minutes." "Did it?" Daniel managed a weak smile. "I do not remember." "You should have let the machines take me. You had no logical reason to sacrifice yourself." Logic had nothing to do with it. He reached up slowly and touched her face. "Somewhere in the past 4 months, duty became something more. I did not plan to love you, but I do, and humans will do anything for the people they love." Was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. "My court believes I married beneath my station. They think you are a simple human who got lucky. And what do you think? I think I married the most extraordinary being I have ever known." She leaned down and pressed her forehead to his, a gesture of deepest intimacy in culture. "I think I was a fool not to see it sooner." The recovery took months. Daniel pushed himself hard, rebuilding strength that had nearly been destroyed forever, refused to leave his side, delegating responsibilities to ministers while she helped her husband heal. The alliance between Earth and the Dominion grew stronger than any treaty could make it. Two peoples united not just by politics but by the bond between their leaders. Human advisors joined councils. Observers visited Earth. A new era of cooperation began. 1 year after the battle, a celebration was held in the Crystal Palace. The anniversary of victory over the brought visitors from across the galaxy. Former enemies came as friends. Former strangers came as allies. Queen and her husband stood on a balcony overlooking the festivities. The sun was setting over the crystal towers, painting everything in shades of gold and purple. "I was wrong about humans," said. "I thought your people were small and weak and unimportant." "Most people do," Daniel replied. "We prefer it that way. Underestimation is a powerful advantage." "I will never underestimate you again." "Good, because I have many more surprises planned." She looked at him with curiosity, such as, "Well, for one thing, I have been learning cooking. The purple dish from our wedding feast was actually delicious, and I think I have figured out how to make it." Laughed, a sound that had become more common since the battle. "That dish takes years to master." "I enjoy challenges." He took her hand in his. "Besides, I have a lot of time. I plan to spend the rest of my life at your side, discovering new ways to surprise you." She squeezed his hand gently. "And I look forward to every moment." They stood together as the sun disappeared below the horizon. A human and a queen, different in almost every way, united by something that transcended species or politics or tradition. Love was illogical. It could not be calculated or predicted. It analysis and broke every rule of probability. That was exactly why it worked. Below them, the celebration continued. Above them, stars appeared one by one in the darkening sky. And in the space between them, the galaxy was forever changed by one quiet human who had shown the universe what true power really looked like. It was not strength or weapons or technology. It was the unbreakable heart of someone willing to give everything for the people they loved. That was the power of humanity. And the alien queen who had once doubted would never forget it.